For today's video, I'm going to show you how to validate email addresses for a text field input. Now, this will actually validate an email address as it's entered for the keystroke and will seem seamless to the end user. If I try to just simply type the @ symbol, it won't allow this because that's not a valid email address. But if I start with a valid email address at the beginning and then press the @ symbol, that is allowed. It'll prevent you pressing the @ symbol twice anywhere. It'll prevent you from using a dot either side of the @ symbol. You can also see down here as I type in the key presses, they're printed out down here, including the invalid entries. We get an error message printing out, stipulating to the end user that it's an invalid email address being entered. Once they enter or click somewhere else, that error message will disappear. Once they enter an email address, if I try to enter this, it'll actually give an error message. Once it's valid, it'll allow you to enter that email address and give the end user a notification that the email is valid. It'll also stop you from entering in 2 dots at once. Okay, let's get started. Now in Scene Builder, I've created a basic project here where we've got a text to prompt the user for entering an input. We've got a text field which has got an ID, it's got an action on the key typed and on the mouse clicked. And then we've got over here an image, which is what we display for the error, and the error label down the bottom here. The error label has an ID and the image has an ID. Down here we have a button and then we have an on action on that button, so when the users enter the email address we can check that against a regular expression. Now over in NetBeans is our project coded. Don't forget to subscribe on my YouTube channel and on my website to receive all the code. Now in the last project, that's my text field validation project. That'll show you how to set up all the libraries for your project itself and to set up the runtime and explain to you further how I've coded the object which is returned by the validate text field and explain exactly what the code does. But in this tutorial I'm going to simply show you how to validate for email input. So over here on validate text field, you create an instance of this class and do this for each text field that you wish to validate separately. But down here we actually just validate the input. We just check to make sure that it is a number and that it is an alphabetic input. And then we actually allow through certain keys, the backspace, etc. down here. Check to make sure that we're not at the first position. If we are, we won't look ahead of that first position. We'll skip this bit just for now. What we're interested in, we'll check to see if you're trying to enter in a decimal point and that we are at the first position. Or we'll check to see if you're trying to enter the @ symbol and are at the first position, because this is not a valid email address. And if it is, we send an error code, an error message, and set the error to true. Now, down further, we're just testing to see if there's 2 @ symbols typed at once or 2 dots typed at once. And down here, we're just checking for the paste key. And here we're just seeing if any invalid keys are listed that are entered, and then returning the error codes and removing the actual character from the actual text input itself. Now up here is if it's not the first input, then obviously we can look ahead without causing any major issues. We still have a try catch just in case. Here we're just trying to check to see if we're putting a decimal point after the @ symbol. And then if it is, we send an error message and we remove that dot from the actual text field input again. Here we're just trying to see if we're putting an @ symbol after the decimal point. If it is, we set the error message and we set the error boolean to true as well. We remove the character from that position and reposition the caret position itself. Then we check down here after we've dropped out of this to see if we've actually exceeded the maximum length. And if we have, we remove that character and reposition the caret position itself. Now in our FXML validate email.java file, we have our action that we had on a button, which over in Scene Builder here, you can see the action call here. So once a button is pressed, it'll call this method here, which will use the regular expression up here to check against what the user has entered to make sure it's a valid email address. If it's not, it'll set the appropriate error messages. On the text field, we have the input here. You can see here over in Scene Builder, we have the action here for key typed, and we have the action here for mouse clicked. So here we actually call our instance of Validate TextField to actually check the keystrokes as they entered by the user itself. In here we actually check to see the mouse clicks that are entered by the user themselves and setting the actual character position accordingly in the actual instance of a valid text field. And down here we simply just display the error message to the actual screen itself. Now if you like all the code, please subscribe on YouTube and subscribe on my website and I can send you all the code. Over here on Validate Email, the FXML controller itself, this is the file created by Scene Builder itself, and we'll actually call these actions themselves. These validation projects use a key event with string manipulation to achieve the validation effect. In the next videos, I'll show you more advanced programming using TextFormatter.